Okay, here we go. Welcome everybody to our field instructor training at the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences at Case Western Reserve University. We're so happy to have you here with us today. This video training will be recorded so we can post it on our resource page on our website. If anybody could, one of our field team, if you could put that link in the chat right now, just so people have it, they can visit it at any time. We will share it again throughout the duration of the training. Can you go back to the first slide for 1 second? There we go. So I just want to make sure that we introduce everybody here on the field team. My name is Nicole Parker, and I am serving as the Interim Assistant Dean of Field Education in all three formats. Kathy?
Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. Good grief. Hi, I'm Kathy Gant. I'm a field faculty advisor on campus, and I typically work with students in the mental health and health concentration.
Thank you, Kathy. Lori?
Hi, Lori Lawrence Painter, and I work with the students in the just a weekend format.
Thank you, Lori. Angie?
Hello, Angela Whidden. I work with on campus full-time students and as well as a small cohort of intensive weekend.
Thank you, Angie. Henrietta?
Hi, Henrietta Jones, Field Education, Department Assistant.
Henrietta keeps us all organized. Thanks, Henrietta. Susan?
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Snyder. I work in the online format with students all over the country, and I am also a field faculty advisor.
Thank you, Susan. Shinobia?
Hi, I am Shinobia Webster Hill. I am in Memphis, Tennessee. I am with the online format, and I too am a field faculty advisor.
Thank you, Shinobia. And is Jody here? Jody Timko is also a field faculty advisor in the online program. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
No, it's not going. Oh, here it is.
Okay, so we're so
Sorry.
thankful for you. We're so thankful for you all being here today. You really are the pillars of our field education program. We could not be successful in this work without you. We really truly appreciate all that you do for our students and preparing them for our profession and giving back to our community. So we cannot thank you enough for all of the work and dedication that you give to our students, and you teach them so many great things. And it takes a village. It takes us all to be able to even prepare one student, right? So we just really appreciate you. We're going to give you a little bit of history of our program. The Mandel School is now celebrating, I believe it's 106 years now. So we've been around a while. The field education became a department in 1985, and our intensive weekend format started in 1987. And our online format began in 2013. So you've probably seen some other field education departments and schools and universities starting an online program recently because of the pandemic. We've been around a while in our online program. So we're very proud of our work. You all know that CSWE has designated field education as the signature pedagogy of social work education, and social work education accounts for about 20% of our curriculum. So it's a big deal, and we put a big emphasis on field education within our curriculum. We have affiliations and community partnerships with over 1,000 field education placement organizations. So we are just very grateful to have community partners all throughout the United States in just about every state. So I'm going to turn it over now to Angie, to Dr. Whidden, who is going to be talking about the training and kind of giving you an overview of what's going on, and we'll start the training now. Thank you all again for being here.
Hello, everybody. So just as a reminder, we are recording this presentation, and we will have it available on that site, which I included the link in the chat. Today, we're going to be talking about the role of field practicum in our curriculum. We're going to be talking about the competencies, learning agreements, and also some supervisory strategies to support students. And as a reminder, this is approved for CEUs and can also count towards your CEUs specific to supervision. So if you have an LISWS, you can, this will meet that requirement. All right, so if we can go to the next slide here. So as we mentioned, we have 3 different formats. We have a lot of people in this training today, and it's so great. One of the things that we love about doing these field instructor trainings is that we have people from, working with students who are in the different formats. We have some, veteran field instructors who have been working with students for a long time. And we have some new field instructors. We may have some task supervisors. So it can help us to get a feel for, which format the students that you're working with are in. I'm going to launch a poll here. So if you can respond to that poll, that will help us see a little bit of what the spread is like. And at the end, we'll have a time too, where we're going to break out into groups that are format specific, because some of the pacing is, different format to format. So, and there are certain things specific to each format. So we want to be able to address those things specifically. So I can't see the result. Oh, there they are. All right. Okay, so it looks like we have about 70% working with on ground. That's our full-time weekly format. About a third working with online students, and just under 10% working with the intensive weekend students. Okay, great.
Dr. Winnan,
Mhm.
can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
I am so sorry. I forgot to introduce our newest member of our field team. I am so embarrassed and I am so sorry, but please welcome our newest field faculty advisor on the on-ground team, Mr. Adusu Vale.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Hello, everyone. I am Adusu Vale. I am the new field faculty advisor here at Mandel School. And primarily, I advise students on campus students. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies to you.
Fine.
All right, great. We could advance to the next slide, please. So we would like to make sure, that you leave here today with helpful resources and answers to your questions. And we'd like to hear specifically from you, what are you hoping to get out of the training today? And if anybody can just pop off mute or you can put it in the chat. What are some specific things you're hoping to get out of today's training? Information about the learning agreement. All right. You will be getting that. Okay, a refresher. Okay, some about paperwork and the required documents. We will talk about that and IPT. What else? How to prepare students for field. Okay, great. Okay, great. And I see somebody wrote in the chat how to best communicate with faculty liaison. I think you might mean the field faculty advisors. And just to clarify with some of the terms that we're going to be using today, your role is identified as field instructor. And we consider that, an extension of our, you are an extension of the classroom essentially. And, rather than being a classroom instructor, you are out there, instructing students in the field. The term that we use for our role is field faculty advisor. And each student is well aware of who their field faculty advisor is. we encourage students to talk to their field instructor about that. And typically you will have heard from us so that you'll know, the best line of communication. Okay.
Ready?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I was just reading to see if there was anything else in the chat. Okay. All right, so large group questions. So we'd like you to spend a few moments, reflecting on what your own experience was like as a social work student out in the field, so that we can, learn from one another and share some of those experiences. So if you could please recall some of the positive qualities of your field instructor, your main supervisor when you were in field. What impact did those positive experiences have on your growth and your professional development? If anybody just wants to come off mute or plug it into the chat. Anybody? I know there are some positive experiences out there.
I had a very positive experience with my field instructor. He was very pro me, like he wanted to make sure that my field experience was catered to what I wanted to do in my career moving forward. So he found opportunities that were outside of the clinic that we worked in that I could be a part of to help me to experience those things as well as what I was learning while I was in the clinic with them. So I felt that that was really good, and I try to do that with my students as well.
Great.
Hi, this is Jasmine. I actually had a really positive experience with my field instructor as well. The thing that I remember most about her is that she did not micromanage, and she was allowed me to kind of figure out things on my own, and in some ways fail, and then kind of recap and critically think how I can kind of dig myself out of the hole, which I think prepared me a lot more for the field that I'm in now. Because now I know how to kind of problem solve and think through things a little bit better.
Great, thank you for sharing.
I agree with the not micromanaging. I had a similar experience. I feel like the field instructor really kind of pushed me to do things independently and, come to them for consultation or feedback, but it was really nice to get the message, yes, this is something you can manage, go out and work it out, and then come back and conference about it.
Great. One thing go ahead.
Hey, Angela.
Hi.
I had a great field instructor experience. This was during the 9/11 terrorists in 2001. And I attended Columbia University. And so it hit me because I was doing my internship. But anyways, the field instructor was able to balance personal, the traumatic experience that we were all going through in the city. And she had a great balance of addressing administrative stuff with clinical stuff. And so that's something that I want to improve because I'm more of a clinical track supervisor at my agency. That being said, back then, autism was just a new thing. And my internship was in an autism center in New York City. So she was a pioneer. And so she had so much knowledge of this focus of autism. So that's like two of the main things that it stood out that I tried to not display, but she was a great role model. So I want to be like her when I grow up. So that's something that kind of hit me with my experience in the having a great field instructor at Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Lori, if you could back up one slide, please. There is a couple of other questions on there I want to make sure we get to. I'm seeing in the chat, my field instructor took the time to help me develop my style, to be patient with me as I made mistakes and learned. I know in my own experience, I really appreciated that my field instructor, I was the first student that she had, and she she had a nice balance of, trusting me to do independent work, and challenging me to do things, so that I could begin to develop confidence while also not micromanaging me, not having the same expectations for me that she would an employee, but really, fostering that experience. So great. And I'm going to skip to the last one. What aspects of your work with students are you most looking forward to? Or are there any areas that you're concerned about?
I guess a big concern is always like, do I have enough to fulfill them? Like that's one that I always worry about. So having the conversation up front about whether I'll be enough or my placement will be enough for what they want.
Yeah, that's great advice, definitely, to have those shared expectations from the onset, and even having that conversation ongoing as well. Like, this is what we are going to start as far as expectations, but then throughout keeping that conversation open to, do you need more? What can we do? Thank you. What else? Anybody else have any aspects that they are looking forward to with the students? One thing we hear from field instructors frequently is that our students, and I know that we feel this way too, when when we start working with students, particularly at the beginning of a semester, it's always a reminder to me that they bring this energy, right? And this excitement about learning, and being open to new challenges. So that's something I always appreciate about working with students. They bring energy, and we encourage them to take the things that they're learning in the classroom, the newest research, techniques, programs, resources, things like that, bringing that into the field as well. So we hope that students will do that. Okay, great. So if we could advance to slide 11, I am going to pass it over to you, Kathy.
Thanks, Angie. So as we said, as we started this presentation today, it really takes a village, and it's important that we know who's in our village and who's working with us, and the supports and resources that we have available to us. So we wanted to kind of give you an overview of the different roles, starting with kind of a general focus of field. And it's important to remember that field is really a place for intentional learning. It's not just finishing a number of hours. It's not just showing up. It's designing learning opportunities. And so that those learning opportunities need to be planned, and they need to be documented in the learning agreement. And we'll talk more about the learning agreement as we go. But we want to highlight that this should be a progressive learning experience, a very gradual integration. Many of our students do not have a social work background. This is their first experience functioning as a professional social worker. So they need to understand what that means, and they need to understand first to observe and to shadow, and then to be observed doing the work as they progress. We want to stress that educational opportunities are the priority over productivity. We know that many of your agencies have productivity standards and expectations that need to be met. That's a great idea to share with our students and to help them understand what that means. But we don't want our students to be held to those same productivity standards as an employee would. Next slide, please. So everybody has a role, including the organization. The agency itself has a role in educating our students. We hope through your direction and your support, every student will be able to see all levels of social work, micro, meso, and macro. that they have the opportunity to address all 10 competencies at both the generalist and the specialized levels. So that means that there's going to be a wide range of learning opportunities, tasks, and exposure for our students. Next is looking at safety. So within the organization, there should be some type of orientation format for the students. Sometimes that's very self-directed and the students can do modules online. Sometimes it's in person and students have the opportunity to exchange ideas with different people. But we want to make sure there is an orientation to the agency getting started. Again, please don't assume students understand safety protocols or feel oriented to the agency. Our students have very different levels of experience and exposure, and they need your help and your guidance in helping them navigate that. Some of the safety concerns that we hear questions about as field faculty advisors are transporting clients, completing home visits, how to navigate an aggressive client, how to de-escalate, and how to protect some of their personal information. They oftentimes need very clear explanations about professional boundaries, protecting their own media resources and cell phones, etc. Next slide, please. So moving from the organization to talking about you as field instructors. As a field instructor with our Mandel School, you're part of a top 10 educational agency. So pat yourselves on the back, that's awesome. We ask that each of you that are in the field instructor role to have a master's degree in social work and at least 2 years of postgraduate experience. The field instructor role is to provide direct supervision with our students. That should be a 60 to 90 minute time frame each week. And it should be protected time, that it's you and the student having the opportunity to exchange information, ask questions, and develop and move forward the student's mastery of the 10 competencies. One of the things that can be really helpful with you as a field instructor, so the agency may have provided that overview of orientation. You as a field instructor can kind of bring it down sometimes to the culture of the agency, some of the nuances that students might not have gained from the more general orientation. You can help them. You're going to be able to guide the student through their learning agreement. It's the student's responsibility to develop it with your guidance. So you can help make suggestions about learning opportunities, tasks they can engage in, people they may want to meet or spend some time with, as well as helping them see how their learning is going to progress throughout the semester. You will participate in the field conference, which happens once each field period with the field advisor and the student and yourself. This is a time to review the student's progress, to talk about how things are going, to talk about what they might need moving forward. We ask that you provide active observation and feedback to our students. You may remember your own experiences working with your field instructor, and some of you talked about these of, not micromanaging, but being accessible to give feedback at the moment when things happen. That really is valuable to our students. You will have the responsibility of reviewing the monthly time logs for our students and approve and sign off. We ask, of course, that you keep an open dialogue with not only the student, but with us as field faculty advisors. We value that exchange. We value that opportunity to be able to hear any kind of concerns you may have, and being able to kind of share with you what's working and what's not working along the way. Just a quick note, our on-campus full-time students are involved in what we call Interprofessional Education, IPE. This is every Wednesday from 3 to 5 p.m. So you may hear students say they need to be on campus or available to Zoom during that time frame. This is when they're meeting with other disciplines, typically in the medical field, medical residents, nurses, nurse practitioners, all throughout the campus. All of our different schools have come together and students are joining in the activity to learn from each other. So just know that's happening. You can go to the next slide.
Really slow. Okay, there it is.
Okay, thanks. So another member of our village are task supervisors. Some of you may serve as task supervisors within the agency. These are professionals that are not necessarily social workers. You could be a counselor, you could be a psychologist, any kind of different professional at the agency that has working knowledge of the population and the tasks that the student may be involved with. Many times our task supervisors provide daily support to the students. They really are an added resource. This is not a required position in our village, but it's something we really value and our students value as well. Task supervisors are able to contribute to the development of the learning agreement. You may have a unique perspective of some of the daily activities the student is involved in and may need some extra help with. We invite you to please participate in the field conference and to be with us as we talk about the students' progress and talk about how things are developing. Just as with field instructors, we ask that you also keep an open line of communication with us as field faculty advisors. Again, your perspective is sometimes very valuable because you see the student possibly on a more routine basis and a more continuous basis to know what's going on. And then finally, you'll have access to IPT and also have the opportunity to sign the learning agreement. Thanks, Lori. Of course, our students have roles and responsibilities as well. They're part of the village, right? And we're all working together to support them. We ask that our students take the lead in collaborating with you as field instructors and task supervisors to develop the learning agreement. We ask that they come to supervision with their questions and their areas that they want to explore. So it's not something that you as field instructors have to always come up with what we're going to talk about. The students should be driving some of that. They should be able to share with you things they're struggling with, things that are challenging to them, things they don't fully understand. It's the student's responsibility to schedule the field conference. They can do that through looking at your calendars, our field faculty advisor calendars, and picking out dates. They're also responsible for developing the agenda for the field conference. The field conference should be student-led. So they should take the initiative to organize what's going to be discussed and to take the lead in driving the meeting. It's the student's responsibility, of course, to make sure they meet the hour requirement. We ask that you work with them to make sure that they have a fairly consistent schedule in completing their hours and are documenting that on their time logs. It's the student's responsibility to complete those time logs and any kind of additional documentation. Of course, we ask our students to be open to constructive feedback. Sometimes this is a little challenging. I think we can all remember making a mistake or feeling that we're just not getting something or it's just not clicking. But we ask our students to be open to that feedback and that learning opportunity. So you can help them a great deal in that process. Of course, sometimes things come up in field and need to be addressed. There could be issues, there can be problems, there can be concerns. We hope that you will help our students, and we work to help them as well in addressing those in a professional manner. That's part of the learning, is learning how to be articulate in what the problem is, learning how to go to the appropriate person, how to address the issue, and how to process the outcome. Thank you. Sometimes student concerns can be more than just a conversation in supervision, right? And so when you see some of these come up, our students have lives, they're human beings that have all kinds of experiences. We do have a protocol for addressing those concerns, and we ask that you try and stay in the educator role and not slip into the therapist or the practitioner role. It can be hard, there's no question, but you're part of the academic team. And so if there is a problem that arises, we ask that you reach out to us as field faculty advisors, and we will help you navigate that process, okay? Don't try to engage in being a therapist. I know it's hard, you know, sometimes we're social workers and we want to jump in, but if you'll reach out to us as field faculty, we'll help you navigate that. If a student has a need for a disability accommodation or is experiencing a chronic illness or something else that's getting in the way sometimes of their education, we have a whole process for them obtaining accommodations. We refer them to the Office of Disability Resources, and the student is responsible for providing the information and the documentation of what they may need. Once we get that letter of accommodation from the Office of Disability, us as field faculty advisors and you as field instructors can review what the accommodation is, what it looks like in field, and what needs to be addressed, okay? It's a written plan. It's something that we all can access and have resources to. But please know that it's the student's choice of whether to share that accommodation or not. It's up to them whether they bring it to which class and which instructor. The other important piece of this is to remember that accommodations are not retroactive. Sometimes students may engage in the process of obtaining an accommodation letter at the end of the semester. And unfortunately, that doesn't cover the entire semester. It only covers from the date that we receive the letter moving forward. So that another member of the village is us, the field faculty advisors. We also, of course, have roles and responsibility within the school. We are your liaison between the school, the student, and your agency, our community partner organizations. We are available to the students throughout the semester, throughout the field period, to provide feedback and support. Just like you, our goal is for the students to be successful and to have a really valuable learning experience. We teach all of the field courses, and it's our responsibility to assign the grade. Sometimes students get confused about who's actually providing the grade, assigning the grade. That would be us, the field faculty advisors. We attend and participate in the field conferences. We sign off on timesheets. We review and evaluate the learning agreement. We can help you troubleshoot or identify some learning opportunities. We have some competencies that agencies say, oh, I'm really not sure how to address this research competency. I'm really not sure what to do with this policy competency. Let us know. We'll help you with that process and talk it through with you. We're also available for consultation on any other aspects of field education. As COVID rages and policies change and in-person or remote adjusts, we're here. If you have questions, if you have any kind of issues that you want to discuss, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you in that process. Okay, I know I covered a lot of material. If anybody has any questions.
Oh, I see a hand.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Does anything change when we move from a generalist to specialist placement in terms of requirements from the field instructor?
There's no change in requirements, but that's a great question. So one of the things that you will be looking for is helping the student really deepen and broaden their skill set from generalist to specialist. So yeah, that's a great question, but your responsibility and roles stay the same. I'm going to turn things back over to Dr. Whitten.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, I'm sorry.
For someone who has been an instructor before, and I'm not sure if it would have been a year ago, 2 years ago that it finalized, is my account still in order, or is I had to join a few minutes late and I just want to make sure I know how to get on the account and if it will be the same or if I have to set up a new one?
It should be the same, but you may need to get a reminder email to log in again, and we'll help you with that. Whoever the field faculty advisor is working with your student can help you with that process.
Okay, and we will get an email from them soon?
If you reach out and let them know that you need that help, they'll send you an email.
And the students are aware of how to address that as well. So if
perfect.
Sometimes the students will reach out to us and let us know, my field instructor is having difficulty with IPT is what that's called. And we'll go over IPT a little bit later in the training. And I also included the link to IPT in the chat. So if you wanted to go there and just see if you can get in, that's available now. So, okay, great. So I'm going to talk about the curriculum integration with field education. So the time that students spend in the field makes up about 20% of the curriculum, but we hear over and over from students when they get to the end of the program that field is a huge piece of their development. So it is a big part of how we expect our change agents to develop. So this slide here with the bridge is one of our favorite slides because we like to think about field, and imagine a bridge, from field to the classroom. So we have this concurrent model where the students begin very early. Once they're accepted very early in the process, they start field education. And so we get students with a broad range of previous work experience, life experience, knowledge, things like that. So getting back to the bridge, what we really expect is that there'll be a bi-directional communication between the classroom and field. We ask students to share syllabi, articles, topics that they're talking about in class. And so we hope that students will bring what they learn in the classroom to field, but also that they'll bring what they're learning in field to the classroom. Okay. So this next slide, if we could advance forward, please, is about the Council of Social Work Education, the educational policy and accreditation standards. I think it's back one more, slide 22. Keep going. We're looking for EPOS. There we are. Okay.
It's being real.
Yeah.
It's being weird.
I think it's like lagging or something. So These EPAs, recognize the holistic view of professional competence. You're going to hear us talk, several times about where these competencies fit into the learning agreement and how we, we want you to use those as a guide in determining, what kinds of opportunities the students can get involved in. So there is this, concept that they will build knowledge, skills, values, cognitive and affective processes, right? So we want students to know how to do the work. We want them to do the work. We want them to develop the values that they'll need to integrate while they're doing the work. And we want them to be able to integrate all of that, stay regulated and utilize their critical thinking so that they can take all of those things and put them together. So I like to point students in this direction too. When they're developing their learning agreement, we can get really stuck on the doing. I want to be able to just practice these skills. And sometimes we forget about that important part about just building knowledge about the skills. So sometimes if we have, an area of competency or a practice behavior that a student says, I don't think I'm going to, do a therapeutic group or, some other opportunity, then they could think about it in another way. How can you learn about running groups, even if you don't this semester get a chance to actually practice that skill? What kind of knowledge can you build up around that area instead? And that could include articles, observation, exploring values and supervision, journaling, things like that. Okay, so this next slide, our formats, and again, we'll have breakout rooms at the end that are going to be format specific, so we can get a little bit more specific about what this looks like. But essentially we have, and I know I mentioned before too, we have students that come in with a broad range of skills. Our advanced standing students enter the program already with a bachelor's in social work. And they will be in field education anywhere from 2 to 4 field periods, depending on the format. And our non-advanced standing students don't have a background necessarily in social work. And they complete 4 to 7 field periods, again, depending on format. And that is format specific when it comes to hours as well. So we'll cover that when we are in our format breakout. Okay. So on this next slide,
you want to mention about the course, Angie?
Oh yes, the seminar. So we have field education, organizational theory and practice that students take when they first enter the program. Our non-advanced standing students have that their first 2 field periods. So it's a companion course where students can, we talk about things like how to utilize their supervision. We ask them to do an organizational assessment in that course, and our advanced standing students have that for their first field period. And they do not have that same companion course once they move into their specialized years. And I know earlier, somebody had mentioned wanting to just make sure that, is there enough? Do we have opportunities to fulfill what the student needs? And this is a good slide to be thinking about when it comes to that. The learning agreement also is structured in a way that it hits all of these areas. So we expect that students will have exposure to all the practice behaviors at all different levels. And sometimes this means thinking outside of the box or broadening how a student could maybe get experience. So going back to the example about groups, for instance, sometimes students will say, well, I'm not going to be running a group, or we don't do groups at this organization, so I won't get the opportunity to do that. And we ask them to think about What are some other groups that are just present in the organization? So working with groups could be, using those knowledge, skills, and values in staff meetings, or any other group of colleagues, for instance. Okay. Same goes with individuals, for instance. So if you have a community practice student who maybe doesn't have a caseload and work one-on-one with clients, we ask them to think about their skills in working with individuals, even that they're working alongside. Okay. So we do have, as I mentioned, a competency-based curriculum. This next slide lists these 10 competencies, and this is how our learning agreement is laid out so that students can identify learning activities that hit each of these 10 competencies. The standard for most social work programs is 9 competencies, and we have a 10th that asks students to focus on leadership as a competency. As an area of competency. And we have lots of different suggestions on ways that students can do that. That could include like presenting at a staff meeting, maybe doing a training, those kinds of things. Okay. So the learning agreement. Some of you may know that we recently have redeveloped the template. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback about it. It's the learning agreement you find in IPT. And again, I put that link in the chat if you wanted to go into IPT and look around. So the learning agreement process is such that we talk about this in the companion course that they take, the field seminar. And the student and field instructor will sit down in supervision early in the field period to identify, what is the overarching goal going to be? What do you really want to make sure that you learn about this field period? Then the student will develop learning activities that will ensure, what are you going to be doing that is going to give you access to each of these areas of competency. And then we ask that students revisit that learning agreement throughout the field period. We don't want students to develop this on the front end and then not look at it again until the end. What we would really like is for students to regularly be bringing this up in supervision and looking at those learning activities and saying, okay, this is our plan. Are we hitting all of these areas? Is there another opportunity that's come up that could help further that area of competency? And we also ask students as well to be writing in their learning agreement throughout the field period about ways that they've demonstrated their knowledge. Like how did you demonstrate that you know about this area? How did you demonstrate that you have skills in this area? How did you demonstrate that you've developed values? And there are due dates throughout the field period that students have in order to begin to develop and to be revisiting the learning agreement. So students are well aware of these due dates. Even before class starts, they have access to the syllabi, which indicate when all these things are due. So there are no surprises, definitely. Students are well aware of the deadlines. All right, looking at my notes here. Okay.
Right.
All right, so if we can
It's
go
lagging.
to what's that?
No, it's just lagging. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Well, the next slide when it pops up is just gonna, it will tell you about what some of the jargon is on the learning agreement. And the required generalist behaviors. I'm not going to read through each of these, but this slide show will be available as a PDF following this training, so you can always go back and reference these. But here are listed here are a few samples of different learning activities. it is the student's responsibility to write these, and we ask that they do that, of course, with your support. And we want a lot of communication between field instructors and students when they're identifying what are you going to be doing in the field. Developing the learning agreement too is also part of students being able to really, what I like to refer to as, sharpen their social work lens. So looking at practice behaviors and understanding what that is. So, really being able to, for instance, if we have, students who may write on their timesheet or write on their learning agreement, make phone calls to clients. Well, we want you to sharpen your social work lens and tell us what are you really doing when you're making phone calls to clients? Are you making those phone calls because you're going to assess with that client what some barriers might be, what you're going to assess what needs are, you're going to begin to engage them, in a therapeutic alliance, those kinds of things. So really laying out, what is social work and what does it look like in practice? Okay.
Hey. All right, we are going to take a 5-minute break and then come back with the next session right on time. It's 1 o'clock. Couldn't have planned it better. See you all in about 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to get started again. Okay, as we come back together, the final segment, we'll talk about supportive learning environment and supervision. So let me pose the question to the group. What's the difference between being a field instructor and a work supervisor? Either put it in the chat or say it aloud. Few ideas. What do you see as the distinction? All right, making sure I wasn't on mute. Somebody, expectation of the workers involved, interns are going to have different expectations than our staff members. That's a good point. We're going to talk about some strategies. It's important to think about, and go back for a second. Main difference is that the expectations of a student in field should be different than an employee. And in the online and in just weekend formats, oftentimes the field organization is also the employer organization. So it's even more critical that those boundaries be maintained from the students' perspectives with expectations. And then in turn, your expectation as a field instructor, of course you are a supervisor, but also, as we've talked about already today, there's the element of teaching and mentoring and being a collaborator and a coach, to name a few. So let's talk about some strategies. You look at on the right, as a student goes through different activities, they are building their confidence towards building their competence, or in your assessment, maybe some incompetence and needing to practice. And I'm not saying that to be funny, it's just that it's a way to regulate and assess ongoing basis with that feedback that we talked about. And so that the student, as they move out in these concentric circles, are moving towards the feeling of I can do this, of self-efficacy, right? That they are in turn willing to try something new because they have had been validated on some previous activities of their practice. And on the left, you can see repeating that practice also builds that competence, but also that confidence. So those really go hand in hand. And from our perspective, looking at the student building confidence, they are able to articulate what they know, articulate questions of what they don't know, what they like more of, what they're interested in. And those are great indicators for you to see how they're learning, how they're progressing, right? Based on those things. We talked about earlier, and just to reiterate, your role of reflecting and discussing. We do ask that you observe your student in practice a minimum of 1 time per field period. Can certainly be more dependent on the activity. One of the questions that came up earlier in our chat when we were just doing some introductory things was some strategies. And here are some: that you're creative, that you're very realistic with expectations, that you stay connected to the student and to us and to the curriculum and understanding the learning agreement and what's expected, that you are a teacher, but it's also collaborative, a two-way street. You're seeking out support, you're being flexible, and ultimately at the top that you understand these requirements, which is why we're glad you're here today. And this is an ongoing process as our policies may change, that you stay aware of what those expectations are. I also want to note here that, remember, those of you who have productivity standards, that is not the same as an employee for a student. Other activities need to be educationally sound, meaning it's not educationally sound for a student to have 12, 15 cases. We're looking at diversity in clients, diversity in activity, so that they can get a range. And someone just asked a question in the chat about one activity satisfying more than one competency. Absolutely. That is really, in my opinion, well thought out activity, is if it does cross over into more than one competency area. So you'd have a direct practice that also looks at the policy behind that practice. And that could be an increase in knowledge. Everything isn't skill-based, as Kathy talked about earlier, right? So knowledge, skills, and values are also all reflected in the competency. Everything isn't skill building. So understanding that and being mindful of that will help you as a supervisor develop some activities that are across all areas. The other thing that will help a student is that you make the implicit explicit, that you were very transparent about what's going on in your head, right? And so that if you have developed a great rapport with the student, they're asking questions, they seem invested and involved, please don't assume that they necessarily get it to the extent that you would like them to understand that. So that you break it down and listing those specific behaviors, specific characteristics and skills ahead of time, that they know what they're working towards. This is what it looks like in an evaluation standpoint. This is what you're going to be evaluated on. And so as they are practicing, that they know when they have reached a level of competency, they can feel good about that, and they also can see their accomplishment at the same time. So this is not just week after week after week that they are just showing up and doing a practice, albeit that's great. But the deeper part of that is that they are understanding what they're doing and why they're doing it in relation to the other aspects of the agency or of the service. You're going to talk about values and ethics. We talked about that earlier. You reflect on their practice. That's what I mean by students having a better understanding or rationale, that they understand why they're doing what they're doing in relation to that. It's not just skill building, in the relation of that part of the field. So if they're in a medical profession what are either other agencies doing, what are other hospitals doing, what are other facet departments within your agencies doing, that they understand that in relation to what they're learning and what they're doing, so that they are both on a micro level and then also on a macro level, looking at the totality of where they fit in the landscape of all those services or programs. Administratively, just want to note that students expect, and we expect, that they have consistent weekly supervision time, a minimum of 60 minutes. We understand everyone's busy, we understand, especially during this time of uncertain health risks, that there could be some weeks that are missed. But we are aiming for once a week throughout the field period of 60 minutes, that they can rely on that protected time without interference for them. And I like it as another participant said earlier, that they were pro me, right? That you want to be pro that student and their cheerleader, and there for them as a resource. And the unit balance that needs to address any administrative issues with their learning, and we have a process for that within the school. So should that come up, that you as your role as educator reach out to us if some administrative issues need to be addressed. And you may have to step outside of your role as supervisor in order to do that without compromising your relationship with the student. Okay, so this is being the heavy, but that's the part of this, as Kathy outlined, is being part of the village. This is where this would definitely come into play, so that you can maintain that relationship while addressing any issues that we need to address. So any questions specifically about that? Okay. And finally, we surveyed our students, and these 6 attributes are what we got from them. That what they expect and how they thrive in the field supervision relationship is if you're positive, you're supportive, you challenge them, you reassure them, you're consistent, and that there are clear expectations. And so that's a tall order, and we understand that, but it is a collaborative process with us to make that happen. And so a lot of, in our large group discussion in the beginning, that question about your own field experience. Think of how many of those of you who said you had positive experiences can categorize them in one of these 6. I suspect a lot. All right, so that's that section. I don't know who is next. And I'm sorry, this advancing is either really slow or it's going really fast. All right, here we are. So moving into evaluation. On the learning agreement, at the end of each field period, you will be asked to evaluate in each competency area. And if you look at this chart, these are the numbers, numeric numbers that you will be entering in. And then there is a narrative that you will write at the end of the learning agreement. In the generalist curriculum, the modal rating in the first field period will be a 1 or a 2, as they are either inconsistent due to time of practice and learning or developing confidence, right? They're just getting started. And so that is what's reasonable. There may be some 3s. They may develop competence, especially some of our advanced standing students. There may be some areas that they're demonstrating competence right off the bat in the first one, but really expect 2 if you had to put a modal rating of 2. At the end of the generalist field period, the modal rating is a 3, that you have demonstrated competence in almost all of the competency areas that are listed on the agreement. There may be an occasional 4 where there are some exemplary demonstration of a higher level of competence. We do not expect to see all four, excuse me. We definitely don't expect to see all fours in the first field period, right? Or even the second. You have students who we dissuade them from giving all fours, and we're doing the same. This is pass, no pass. And so it's a feedback mechanism and not an indicator of an A, B, C, or D, or F. Okay, and we work really hard in seminar to express that to our students, and hopefully you're getting that same idea that a 3 is that you demonstrate competence. In the feedback, you are praising them for things and validating things that they are doing well, maybe a 4, and a 1 or a 2 just simply means some things that we will continue to work on. And there could be some corrective action, and there'd be a process for that. If, let's say, at the end of the generalist field period, there looks like there are more 2s than 3s. But it shouldn't be a surprise to the student to see that at the end, right? Should be ongoing communication throughout. That is not a surprise that you are evaluating them as more 2s than 3s. Similarly, in the specialist, you're starting all over again. So in the specialist level of your field period, again, 1s or 2s on the specialist area on the first part of, of the field periods. And then in their final field period, that you were looking for 3s as a modal rating with some 4s. And here, as the students are ending their field education, there may be more 4s, but a rationale for those 4s should be indicated, as well as any 2s at the end of the field education. So are there any questions about that? I know there are a number of field instructors on today that are not new. So are there any comments about that, or barriers with this? This is usually a common conversation that we have with field instructors and students about evaluation.
If I could just jump in real quick with a reminder about a common misconception about the 0 rating is that it could stand for no opportunity. So this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier when it comes to reviewing the learning agreement throughout the field period to ensure that there is some accessibility to all 10 competencies, because there is not an option for no opportunity. So instead, a 0 would indicate that the student has demonstrated that they are incompetent in a certain area, and we would need a corrective action plan for that. So I just wanted to remind everybody about the 0s.
Right, it's a very rare occurrence. Thank you. So to summarize, let's see what this is sharing. I can't read I'm sorry. You're going to describe the methods that are used to evaluate them during the field period. Again, it should not be any surprise to the student. At the end, this should be an ongoing conversation between the 2 of you and others that they are involved in. All activities need to have a range of skill building, value clarification, behaviors, and their cognitive and affective processes, or reflection, if you just need to reduce it to a word, necessary for them to be successful, because that's what they're being evaluated on. Similarly, all of their courses also are delineated in the same fashion. You want to outline their areas of strength and areas that you need to work on, because again, this is a feedback mechanism towards the next field period. And then any additional comments for opportunities sometimes are listed there, what the student is interested in to do next, and things of that nature is also appropriate to list on there. Okay, so we're here to the.
Okay, thank you.
But I want to stop just before we go on, because we've covered a lot of any questions about anything that we have covered, and I haven't looked at the chat, if anybody can look at that. before we go on to make sure we cover, just make sure we respond to people.
Mhm.
Is there any questions on there?
I have a quick question. I like that you explained that it's on a pass and no pass scale, because then that kind of allows us to kind of grade truthfully and honestly, and gives them like more areas to improve on. My question is that if we implement like a PIP, like a performance improvement plan, is that something that we need to communicate with you, or is that something that we would only communicate with us and the students? I know you mentioned that if they are incompetent or they are unable to kind of perform the task that we ask, it shouldn't be a surprise to them, but I wouldn't want it to be a surprise to you as well. So if we did implement a PEP or a PIP, is that something that we need to make sure we communicate with you guys as well? Or is that just something between us and the student?
I would say as open and collaborative you can be. I think that's only supports if you can share that. I mean, there's a fine line. Not every little thing needs to be shared with us, but certainly if there are trends, or if it looks like there's going to be a pattern of issues, that sooner rather than later, you know, in case that you do need assistance with helping and supporting that student, I would say yes to share it with us, but not to micromanage, right? We've already talked about that. So it's not a requirement. So it's kind of case by case basis, I would say. The other thing though too with that is sometimes just a modification of what it is you're asking a student to do, like perhaps their entry point may not be where you've assessed it to be. Maybe they need to back up and start with knowledge building, or maybe they need to back up and do some shadowing, right? Or have a co-facilitator in the group with them so that they can be successful. So I would add that may rectify the issue, and so that the student can feel successful and have some, they can see where they need to grow at the same time of having some success if it's slowed down or pared down what you're asking them to do. Again, not being an employee, and they should not feel they have this expectation. This is a learning environment. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, just
okay,
just to clarify. Okay, my understanding it's if it's something that we would need support from you guys, I think that's something that we would then kind of like loop you guys in. But if it's something that we can kind of handle internally at the internship, not employee wise, but definitely like learning wise, then we should just keep it between us and the intern.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
I would just add, Jasmine, that if you feel the need that has gotten to the level of developing a remediation plan or a PIP, as you talked about, I think that's probably an indicator to include the field faculty advisor, because it sounds like that may be beyond just gaining knowledge or gaining, or backing up and shadowing. But if you're feeling like the incompetence level is so significant that you want to develop a plan, I think that's probably an indicator to include the field faculty advisor.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification. And just to be clear, I think at least for our organization, we introduce performance improvement plans, not necessarily to reprimand or anything like that, but more so to just like educate and like provide areas of growth at different levels and different points of their time. So I guess that's kind of what I wanted to know. So you guys are kind of in the loop of how they're doing, what they're doing. And I know we usually have meetings with you guys, but I didn't know if like documentation wise, if that's something that's necessary.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on to resources, I am going to yet again put this link in the chat. We really want to encourage you to please bookmark this resources page. If you want to take a second and go to that website right now, and have a look. You'll see lots of great things to reference. So we have the calendars that are listed there. So those all have start and end dates for the field period, depending on format. We also have near the bottom some other resources, including an active shadowing template. So this is not required, but this is just an option to help students structure their shadowing or observation time. It can be a really helpful tool for students to plan, before the shadowing experience, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you're going to try and get out of these experiences? So those can be helpful. They can be a helpful tool to bring into supervision so that you can review, what did you, when you were observing, XYZ, what did you take from that? And how will that help inform your own professional development? There's also a resource for the 10 competencies there, and some other helpful links. So please do bookmark that so you can revisit. Okay, let's see here. I want to talk a little bit about IPT. So IPT, as you know, and again, I'm going to put that link in the chat so that you can click on it right now as we're talking about it, just so you can make sure that you're able to get in. Again, if for some reason the organizational ID is not working, your password's not working, you or the student can reach out to the field faculty advisor. We can really easily reset passwords, if that's an issue. So in IPT, oh, mine just signed out. You will find a list of the students that has been assigned to you for the field period. And you should also see when documents are ready for you. So something to know about IPT is that this is where you'll go to sign timesheets, which are due, depending on format. I know for the weekly full-time and for the intensive weekend students, they're due to be signed the 5th of the following month. And those won't populate until your student, I believe it's like that with our new template, but the student has to have it completed and signed so that you can see it. The learning agreement, on the other hand, is available in real time. So you should be able to see, in the first several weeks, definitely within the first 4 weeks, you should be able to go in there and see that your student has been, putting in the learning activities. You can pull it up during supervision and talk about it then. If you don't yet have access to IPT, please reach out to one of the field faculty advisors and we can get that process started for you. Trying to think of what other tips and tricks you might want to know about IPT. Are there any questions about?
Well, I'll just add too that often if you aren't in it on a regular basis, it does go dormant and you may need to have your default password refreshed. Just reach out to us and we can refresh that through the system through your default. And so, you don't have to, that happens often. And so don't think you're unique to that. But that's what happens when you're not in it, regularly.
And all the field faculty advisors can literally with a click of a button reset your password. So don't get frustrated with it for too long before you just reach out and have us reset it. Like all things tech, it's got a mind of its own, and sometimes just resetting the password can solve everything.
We have a hand raised, Jennifer.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I just actually have 2 quick questions. I have a new student that just started with me, I think last week. And they are telling me that their field plan is due Sunday, and I do not see anything about her being my student in the IPT. So,
okay. So I would reach out to the field faculty advisor to make sure that that student is assigned to you in IPT. Sometimes that's what the issue is.
You had another question?
Yeah, it was those two. I don't see her assigned, and she's telling me that her field plans due already. She's only been in placement a week. That seemed a little off to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what format is the student in.
She's online.
Oh, okay. That might
I'm
be
with online, and I'm with online, Angie, and that's incorrect.
Okay.
Nothing for the loan agreement is due until week 3. I would encourage asking the student to provide with a syllabus, and it has all the when it's due.
Okay.
Okay, great. Any other questions? And I think we're going to be ready to, Lori, if you want to advance one slide.
I'm trying.
Oh, okay. We're going to be, moving into those breakout rooms that are format specific. Does somebody have our breakout rooms set up? No, I can do that. Let's see. I'm going to rename these here. So I will put the links for the CEU post-test, the evaluation form in the chat, but they'll also be available in the breakout room. So please, before you leave the breakout room at the end of the training, do be sure to complete that CEU post-test so that you can get your CEUs. And then we also have an external field instructor application. We're trying to, really put together a list of those of you that might be willing to volunteer as a what we call external field instructor. And we need these when a student is in a placement and perhaps they have really strong on-site supervision, but the person who is doing their supervision does not have the credentials that are required by accreditation standards. So if that person doesn't have a master's of social work and in 2 years postgraduate experience, then the student needs to have an additional external field instructor. And we really rely on, volunteers to step up and provide that support for students. So if you might think that that would be possible, that would involve, signing timesheets and meeting weekly for an hour to 60 to 90 minutes with the student for the duration of their field placement, and hopefully, some regular communication with the site supervisor too. So,